Okay, we're holding on 43B2. 43B2, the left-hand corner where it says, good morning, Isaac. Good morning. 43.
Morning.
Good morning. 43B2, left-hand column where it says, V'rabbanan delesle eruv kol do koloi darshe. So what is the Gemara talking about? If you remember from yesterday, Rabbi Eliezer learned from the pasuk, from kol machmeses loy sechechu, all chametz you shall not eat. He used the word kol to teach us that even chametz taruvos, that means actual chametz that got mixed up in non-chametz food and therefore was no longer discernible. Im kol zeh, said Rabbi Eliezer, that it's chayav alav. It's prohibited as a lav that gets malchus, from the word kol. And then he said further, from the words, the next pasuk, ki kol oichel chametz v'nikrasa, and whoever should eat chametz shall be cut off. From that kol, he learned out the halacha of women, that women, even though I might have thought, are not in that halacha, because the matzah, the mitzvah, say the positive commandment of matzah, is a mitzvah shezman grama, a time certain mitzvah which women are potter from. So I might have thought they were also potter from the chametz part, from the extra word kol over here. We learned that no, they are in the prohibition of eating chametz, and therefore they're in the positive commandment of eating matzah. So in other words, Rabbi Eliezer Darshins learns up the word kol. He always learns it for a drasha. The Rabbanon, on the other hand, did not, because according to the Rabbanon, chametz taruvos, chametz that is in a mixture, that's mixed up in it, is combined in stuff that is not chametzdik and is no longer discernible, is no longer be'en. According to the Rabbanon, midi oraisa, there is no problem. In Torah, biblically speaking, there's no problem to eat it. It's only rabbinically that we say you cannot eat chametz that is mixed up with non-chametz food, and it's no longer discernible. Only rabbinically, because, says the Gemara, and this is where we're up to, because Rabbanon, the lesle eruv, the Rabbanon who do not hold of mixtures, meaning that when chametz is mixed in, real chametz is mixed in with non-chametz and it disappears in the mixture, they hold that it's not minat Torah, it's not a problem. That must mean kol loy dorish. The word kol, any, that's in any of these psukim, this is not something that they believe should be, what do you call it, should not be expanded upon. So Zakti Gemara, if that's the case, Ela Noshem Minalahu, so if they don't expand on the word kol, where do the Rabbanan know that women are part of the prohibition of not eating chametz? Good question. So says the Gemara, kol loy dorish. You're right. The rabbis do not learn the word any. The Rabbanim don't learn the word any. Ki kol, for any, they do expand. Because the pasuk over there says, ki kol oichel chametz v'nikrasa. For any one who eats chametz, the nikrasa shall be cut off. So there's two extra words, ki kol. Okay, so then, all right. So ki kol. So that's where the Rabbanim learn out that women are included in the prohibition of eating chametz, and if they're included in the prohibition of eating chametz, therefore they're in the positive commandment of eating matzah. So now the Gemara goes back to Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer, aim a kol. If this is the case that we darshan, we expand the word ki kol, not just kol, but ki kol. Remember, Rabbi Eliezer is the one that does expand on the word kol. He says one kol comes to teach me that taruva is a mixture of chametz into non-chametz, and the chametz is no longer discernible, is a lav, gets malchus, and the other one, ki kol oichel chametz v'nichasa, teaches us about the women being in the isser of chametz. He says like this: Rabbi Eliezer, ema kol l'rabbis anoshim. If that's the case, then in this pasuk of ki kol oichel chametz v'nichrasa, the kol should be for women, that the women are also in the prohibition. But if that's the case, the extra word ki kol, the rabbis say rubai, then in that case, Rabbi Eliezer should go ahead and expand further. Ki kol comes to include mixtures. The chametz, the actual chametz that's mixed into non-chametz that now is no longer discernible, is not a lav, is not simply a prohibition that gets malchus, but in fact should now be a lav that gets chorus, that should get cut off, because this pasuk says ki kol oichel chametz v'nichrasa, and should be cut off. And if I have an extra word ki, and he already darshans all the kols, so then he must darshan also, he must expand on the word ki as well. And if that in that case, then why does he say that taruvos, the mixtures, is only a lav for malchus, for lashes? Let him say it's a lav and it's included in the chorus of being cut off. So Zakti Gemara, if you want to simply give a simple answer. Ki kol Rabbi Eliezer loy dorish. Rabbi Eliezer does not expand on ki kol, on for any. He just says it's just kol, any. It's all one saying. So therefore, there's no open saying. So therefore, I've got one kol to teach me taruvas are allowed to get malchus, and the other kol comes to teach me that women are part of the prohibition of eating chametz, and there's nothing left over to teach me that the taruvas, that mixtures would get chorus. So the Gemara says that's not possible, because I'll show you that he does. But Tani, because we learned, if you remember again, we talked about kabim menachis, the meal offerings, the grain offerings that were brought on the mizbeach, on the altar. And the pasuk says as follows. Here the Gemara brings down over here, sar bal takiru, do not burn on the altar leaven. But the actual pasuk is as follows: kol mincha, all minchas, asher tikrivu Hashem, that you offer to Hashem, loisasa chametz, it should not be leavened. It should not be chametz. Ki chol sa'ar udavash, because all leaven and honey, loisak tiru, should not be offered mimenu ishal Hashem, shall not be offered as a fire offering to Hashem. That's the pasuk. So now the Gemara says like this: V'atani sar bal takiru. When it comes to the menachis, you're not allowed to bring onto the altar stuff that is leavened. Okay, very clearly. So Zakti Gemara, from that pasuk, basically from the words alone of the pasuk, Ainli ela kulai. I would only know if the whole mincha, if the whole grain meal offering was leavened, okay, that I'm not allowed to bring on the altar. Miksasai minayin, how do I know if only half of it is leavened, but the other half has not leavened yet? How do I know that's still not allowed to go on? Talmud Loimar, kol, because the pasuk begins kol hamincha, all minchas. The word kol means all, even if only part of it is leavened. Zakti Gemara, eruvay minayin. How do I know eruvay minayin? How do I know that if it ended up being mixed together, it mixed together the chametz into the non-chametz part, so that the chametz part, the part that was leavened, is no longer discernible. Is no longer discernible in the mincha, in this karban mincha. Still, that's not allowed to be brought on the altar. Talmud loymar ki kol, because the pasuk says ki kol hamincha, all the minchas. So now Zakti Gemara, if that's the case, ki kol. So now the Gemara says, man shamat le the dorish kol. Who's the man diyoma? Who's the Tana that goes at that we know for sure expands on the word kol, all? The answer is Rabbi Eliezer. The answer is it's Rabbi Eliezer. We just finished saying Rabbi Eliezer is the one that says, I use one pasuk of kol machmetzes loisechelu, radical, to teach me that taruvas, that eruvin, that real chametz that falls into a mixture and gets mixed up so that it's not discernible is chayav alav, and the other kol teaches me that women are mechuyev in the avera, in the loisaseh of eating chametz. That's Rabbi Eliezer. Well, then you see the Kadarish Kikol. Now we're on 43b3. The Kadarish Kikol. And you see over here by Mincha that they do go ahead and expand and say Talmud Loima Kikol, that even if you have a mixture of the mincha, of the chametz part of the mincha that's mixed into the non-chametz part of the mincha, so it's not discernible that there's any chametz in this mincha, you still can't bring it on the mizbeach, you still can't bring it on the altar. So you see that Rabbi Eliezer al-Karchel get forced to say, Rabbi Eliezer does darshan, does expand on the word kikol, and if that's the case, then from the pasuk, he can learn that a Reuven chametz that is a part of a mixture, even though it's not discernible, shouldn't simply be a lob that gets malchus, that gets lashes. It should be able to be risen to be a lob that also gets chorus. Zok the Gemara kasha. You got a good question. Every time the Gemara uses the word kasha, it's difficult. In the words of the article, it is indeed difficult. That means there is a way to get out of this, but you'll have to use, like they said, the grubber finger, the big thumb. You'll have to twist and turn to get out. There is a way out of it, but the question is a good question. So now we finished this part of the Gemara. Now the Gemara is going to go into, once again, what's known as a shas sugya, into a Talmudical topic that is all over the place. We've been talking about, and stop me if I'm not being clear, we have been talking about mixtures. So since we're on the subject of mixtures, of taruvos, we now come to something known as siruf, mitzaref, combinations, because that's what we've been talking about. Chametz that got mixed up into non-chametz. Here's the question. We all know, for the purposes of the conversation, that achilo, the isur achilo, the prohibition of eating, is always on a sheer kizayis, is always on a volume of an olive. Sometimes it's the volume of an egg, but for the purposes of today, let's talk about it's the sheer kizayis, right? That if you eat less than a sheer kizayis, less than the volume of an olive, right? You're not over, you do not get punished for doing it, right? That's the basic thing. We said when it comes to eating matzah, you have to eat a kizayis. When you come tomorrow, you have to eat a bay. So here's the question. What happens if I eat a half of kizayis of something that is usr, and then I eat another half of kizayis with it of something that is kosher, that you're allowed to eat? So I eat something that's prohibited, and with it I eat another half that's forbidden. So here's the question. Do I say, because at the end of the day, I ate a kizayis, and within that kizayis was the thing that was usr, was the thing that was prohibited, it means I ate a kizayis of which in it was the prohibited food, therefore I blew it. I was over an avera. Or no, do I say it does not combine? I ate a half a kazayis that was no good. I ate a half a kazayis that is good. The fact that I ate them together is very nice, but the actual fact is that I only ate half of what's no good. And therefore the two do not combine to create the sheer kazayis, the volume of kazayis. The classic case is, like we learned yesterday, we all know that you're not allowed to eat the fats of a domesticated animal, whether it's brought onto the altar, whether it's a blemished animal, whether it's a regular shechted behema, a regular slaughtered behema. You're not allowed to eat the fats of a domestic animal, and if you do, you get karas. You get cut off. We do know that you're allowed to eat the fats of a wild animal, like a deer. You're allowed to eat the fats of a wild kosher animal, let's say like a deer. So what happens if I ate a half of chalev, of the fats of a domesticated animal, and I ate another half of deer's fat, and I ate them together, so I ate a kizayis of fats? Do I say we then combine? We're mitzaref. We are mitzaref the two fats together. The fact is, I ate a kezayis worth of fats, and therefore the heter, the permitted fats are from the wild animal, combine with the forbidden fats of the domestic animal to combine to come to the shir kezayis, and therefore I'm over on having eaten of having eaten from the forbidden fats. Or do I say no? The forbidden fats are the forbidden fats. The permitted fats are the permitted fats. And the fact that I ate them together is very nice, but that's got nothing to do with it. I ate a half a gazayas of the forbidden, and it doesn't come together. That's this Gemara, otherwise known is heter mitzaref le'isser. Does permitted combine with forbidden to create the volume, to create an isser or not? So Zok the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Avu, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Call, we're on 43b3. Now we're in the right-hand corner, the right-hand column. Call isurim shebetayra in all the cases of forbidden stuff, forbidden substances that are mentioned in the Torah. Ein heter mitzaref le'isser. We say that the permitted substance does not combine with the forbidden substance to create the full volume, the shir kazayas, the volume that creates a punishable activity. Chutz, except, as in always, there's always an exception to the rule. So normally we say, according to Amar Rabbi Avu, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, essentially, says we do not say ein heter mitzaref le'isser. Permitted does not combine with prohibited to create the shir achila, the shir kazayis. Chutz mi isurei nazir, except for the prohibitions of a nazir. What's a nazir? Once again, a nazir is somebody who says, I will not drink wine and take a haircut, and therefore he's not allowed to have anything to do with the wines. Okay? And over there we say that if, let's say, he eats a half a kazayas of grapes, and he eats with that a half a kazayas of bread, over there we say the combination of the grapes and the bread, now that he ate a full kazayas, a full volume of olives, an olive's volume, yes, it's mitzaref, it does combine le'isser. Why? Sharei Amra Torah Mishras. With the pasuk says, V'chol Mishras Anovim lo yishte. Nor may he drink anything Mishras, infused with grapes. That means anything that's infused with grapes, combines with the grapes, as long if it's the shir achila of a shir kazayis, of a volume's worth of eating, Yechayev, and that's the way it is. So Rabbi Yochanan seems to say the only exception to the rule of ein heter mitzaref le'isser, that a permitted substance does not combine with a forbidden substance, is the case of nazir, because there it says mishras, infused. Abakam ziriri, ziri oma af saor bal takdiru. This pasuk that we had before about menachis, where we said, even if it's only a drop leavened and the rest is unleavened, over there too, as long as we have the shir kizayis up on the altar, that they combine together, because the pasuk over there says, kol ha-mincha, the entire mincha. That kol comes to add that even that they do, there is siruf, there's combinations between the leaven, which is obviously prohibited, and the non-leaven, which is permitted. So Zakti Gemara, Kiman, who does Ziri make this assertion with? The Rabbi Eliezer, the Dorish Kol. It has to be Rabbi Eliezer, because he expands on the word Kol. And how does he learning it out that? Oh, but in the case of Mincha, Heta is mitzaref le'issa from the word Kol ha-mincha, from all the mincha. If that's true, and we're on the daf, Mem Dalid Omid Aleph 44A1, if that's the case, le'inyan chametz b'Pesach nami, then Ziri should have mentioned chametz b'Pesach, because what does Rabbi Eliezer hold? He holds that there is such a thing as taruvos, a ruvin by chametz and Pesach, because he said if I have a real chametz and it gets mixed up in non-chametz, and it's no longer discernible, it's still a lav, it's still a prohibition that gets malchus. So that is another case that Zeiri could have brought if he's going according to the way Rabbi Eliezer teaches that we expand on the word kol. So Zakti Gemara, Ein Hachanami, you're right, Zeiri could have brought it. Zeiri, you're right, Zeiri could have brought it down. And the reason why he didn't is only because when he said over there regarding Menachos, that Menachos too, Heter is mitzaref le'isa, the permitted combines with the forbidden to create the shear, is la'afuke midi Abaya. It's because he was coming to exclude what Abaya said. Because Abaya says, Da'ama yesh hak Torah l'pachis mikazayis, that the iser, the prohibition of burning on the altar, the burning on the mizbeach, is even on less than a kazayis. In other words, Abaya learns up that says, even if you burn on the mizbeach a small tiny bit, a mashu of 11 bread, the 11th part of the mincha, you're over on the Aveira. In other words, it has nothing to do with syrup combinations. There is no shear. There is no volume limitation. According to Abaya, that going up onto the altar with menachis, it's kol ha-mincha, means even a drop, a mashu, you put it on the altar and you burn it, you're over on the Aveira. Comes Zehiri, Kamash Malon comes Zehiri, the Haktara, La Pokas Mikazayas. Zehiri comes to say no, like anything else with food, even though it says Kol HaMincha, since it's a food process, it too has a minimum volume, a minimum shear, and that is a kazayis. Now, Yosef Rabdimi become a leila hashemaito. By the way, if there's any questions here, please ask me. This is not simple Gemara. Yosef Rabdimi become a hashemaito. Rabdimi was coming and explained this teaching of Rabbi Yochanan, where Rabbi Yochanan, if you remember before, said all over in the Torah, ain't no heter mitzdarf leisa. Permitted does not combine with prohibited, except in the case of nazir, where it says mishras infused. So Amalei Abaye, Rabdimi then said to Rabdimi, "V'chol isurim shebetoira ein heter mitzdarf leisa." Is this a fact, according to Rabbi Yochanan, that in the whole Torah, all forbidden substances, all isurim shebetoira, we do not say heter mitzdarf leisa. We do not say the permitted combines with the forbidden to come up with to get it to the shear. But Tanan we learned a mikvah shel truma, cereal of that is teruma, cereal that is teruma, which means only the kohen can eat it. V'hashum v'hashemen shel chulin, and the spices, the garlic and the oil, the seasoning, were from chulin, were from good old regular chulin. The halacha is therefore the cereal is huge. The seasoning obviously is not a big deal. Right? It's only a small amount. The end we say, the nogat full yoim b'miktzoson, and it's full yoim if you remember somebody who's tomei, who goes to the mikvah on the 7th day. So now he's tar. We still say that he has to wait until harib shemesh, until the evening, until he can eat truma. And we said any full yoim that touches teruma passes the truma, turns the truma into a shalishi l'tuma, a third level tuma, which means that it itself is tuma, but no longer can convey tuma. It has no more power to convey tuma. So, and here it's logical, of course, because the cereal is the majority over here. The majority is the truma. The seasoning is very small. So logically, that would not be the case. Keep that in mind. We're about to mess that up, but that's where we're standing right now. Right? So we say like this in Nogat full yom b'miksasan. If a full yom touches part of it, pasal is kulon, he disqualifies the whole thing. The whole thing is no good. The kohen can't eat it. It's now tummy. What about if the case is the other way? Hamufkes shel chulin. The cereal, the large cereal is from chulin, regular produce. V'hashum v'hashemen shel truma, and the seasoning, the garlic and the oil are truma. V'nogel tful yom b'miktzasan, and once again the tful yom who toivel, who's really tahar, just he can't eat truma until the nighttime, and if he touches truma, the truma becomes a third level truma. V'nogel tful yom b'miktzasan. Loi posel b'mokim magoy bilvad. He only disqualifies the place where he touched. So if he touched the right-hand corner, that is the only corner that he passled. The rest of it is allowed to be eaten by anybody from this, it seems. Okay, so now's the great question. What in the world is going on over here, right? And now we have the question, Ravinabo. And now we asked, Mokin Magoy, the place that he touched, Amai Psulo. Why is he puzzled? The teruma seasoning, the garlic and the oil of teruma was clearly nullified in the much larger cereal, which was chulin. Teruma is nullified 100 to 1. If there's 100 of chulin and only 1 part teruma, the teruma is nullified. If that's the case, we're on the bottom of 44A1. So it's nullified. Right? If it's nullified, the seasoning is nothing. So it should be completely nullified. So why if the tful yom touches this chulin should have had any effect whatsoever? Well, on this says the Gemara, and now we turn what he called. Now we're on 44A2. Says the Gemara. And the Rabbeinu Chanano adds in the words over here because this will be the question. Put in the words over here in the space over here. Mishmei de Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, our Rabbi Yochanan that said that the only time that we say heter mitzaref le'isser, permitted combines with forbidden is only by a nazir. That's what he said before. But Omer Rabbi Babacham, Omer Rabbi Yochanan, my tam, I'll tell you why a tvul yoim, if he touches part of it. He's metamet. He's what do you call it? He's metamet that part. Hoyol v'zor loika aleim b'kezayis. Because in fact, even though the entire cereal is chulin, and only the seasoning, the little bit of seasoning is truma, and I would think, therefore, it's bottle, it's nullified. The truma part is nullified in the overwhelming part of the chulin. No, a non-kohen, a lady Yisrael that eats from this, if he eats a kezayis, an olive's worth, gets malchus. You know why? Because we have a yisaid of, we learned it before, noisei tam, something that infuses flavor, since the seasoning infuses flavor. And the flavor is discernible, it's therefore not nullified. We said before, back when we were learning Ruchanan, Yechanin, Sagad Kahanim, that even if it's 100 to 1 or more, but if it goes ahead and it has flavor and it imparts flavor, it's noisei tam, it gives over flavor, and the flavor is discernible, it's not bottle, it's not nullified. So therefore, the seasoning that went into this cereal, you can taste the oil and the garlic. And since you can taste the garlic, oil, and the garlic, it's not nullified. And if it's not nullified, we've got a problem of teruma. So a zar who eats it, a non-kind who eats it, if he eats a kazayis, is going to get malchus. So the Gemara over here, here's the pshat. Regarding bittul, it's not nullified. But since at the end of the day, the fact is that the cereal is so large and the seasoning is completely undiscernible in and of itself, the power of a Tful Yoim, who actually is tahar because he went to the mikvah. It's only a technical issue that he can go ahead. He has to wait till the nighttime. So if he touches truma during that period of time between he went to the mikvah and the nighttime, he turns it into a shlishi. He only a psul that it is tamar but can no longer convey. It loses its power under such conditions of such overwhelming chulin against undiscernible seasoning, that its power to me mitama is only this corner right over here. And in fact, Rabbeinu David, the Rishon, says further, Minat Torah, the Tful Yom has no power. Yes, it's truma. There is no question it's truma because nice tam, because the seasoning imparted taste and you can taste it. The flavoring is there. Nonetheless, since you cannot see it, and it's more than 100 to 1, and it's completely gone and mixed up in the mixture, regarding the Tful Yom, the guy who went to the mikvah, there's no what he called. There's no tamei whatsoever. He can't be metame anything min HaTorah. It's only rabbinically do we say that the corner that he touches, that's what it is. So we got two different things here. On the one hand, for the non-kohen, he's not allowed to eat it because it was nice and time and the flavor is there. With regard to the Tful Yom, however, he's got no power. So Zapti Gemara, hey Chidami, what are we talking over here? That a zar, a non-kohen that eats it is chayiv malchus. He didn't eat a kezayis of teruma. The fact is that the seasoning that's in there is less than a kezayis, right? So we said that the only way somebody can get punished is if he eats an olive's volume of whatever is forbidden. So I'll grant you it's forbidden because it's teruma. But the fact is there isn't in here a kezayis worth of truma. So how did he get malchus? Lav, we have no choice but to say, mishum, the heter mitzaref le'isser, that the heter, the rest of the cereal, combines with the forbidden spices of teruma to create a zayis, a sheer kezayis, a volume of an olive. So you see over here that Rabbi Bar Chana Mishmei de Rabbi Yochanan, that Rabbi Yochanan is bringing a case that once again, here is a case where clearly heter mistaref le'isser, that the permitted part, the cereal, combined with the forbidden part, the seasonings of truma, to combine to come to a volume of an olive shear kezayis to make him osut in order to be gave malchus. So you see, how could Rabbi Yochanan only say before that you only say heter mitzaref le'isser only by nazir, only by the case of nazir, and for the Gemara loy, no. My kezayis, what do we mean by kezayis? The ikar kezayis b'kdei achilas pras, because there is a kezayis of seasoning if you eat long enough for in the time that it takes to eat a pras, which is biblical in nature. What is an achilas pras? So you all remember about matzah. We said that the guy running the seder has to eat a full matzah. Has to eat a full matzah for moitzi and matzah, for the mitzvah of matzah and for the mitzvah of the carbon paste of the matzah, eat with the matzah, which was a whole matzah. The halacha is you have to eat the whole matzah between 3 minutes and 9 minutes. We hold 9 minutes for the obvious reasons. A person who eats within 9 minutes is considered to have eaten, to have sat down to eat. If one takes longer than 9 minutes to eat, it's considered like two separate eatings, and therefore it doesn't combine. You're not mekayim in it. What we're saying over here, this idea of kedei achilas pras, in the time that it takes to eat a pras, which is 9 minutes. So if he's going to eat this cereal within 9 minutes, the amount that he's going to eat within 9 minutes will definitely be a kezayis of even the seasoning. Very good. So Zapti Gemara, we're now on 44A3. Okay, Amalei, what he called, so the Amalei, so he says like this, in, yes, the idea, what Amalei in, yes, the idea of Kazayis, B'dei Achilas Pras is a diaraisa to be mecha, and you are Mechayed Malchus. So pray the Gemara, if that's the case, if that's true, Amai Pligi Rabbanan Oleh, the Rabbi Eliezer. Why do they argue with Rabbi Eliezer b'chutach habavli? In the chutach habavli, if you remember in our Mishnah, chutach is a dip that has moldy bread in it, that also has in it salt and milk, and it's a milchig, a dairy dip made out of moldy bread. And the Rabbanan said, that thing, only according to Rabbi Eliezer, you chayiv malchus. According to Rabbanan, you're not mechayiv malchus because it's taruvais. It's a mixture. It's a mixture in which bread disappeared into the non-chametz stuff. So what's going on? So why did the Rabbanan argue? If it's a diaraisa, kedei achilas pras is a diaraisa. So if you eat the chutach within 9 minutes, you should also get malchus, even according to the Rabbanan. Zakti Gemara, Elomai. If to this that you want to say before the Rabbi Bar Kana, Mishmei de Rabbi Yochanan said that you chayiv on the seasoning of the truma, okay, in the cereal of chulin, mishum the hetem mitzaref leisa, because permitted combines with the forbidden. Saif, amai pligi Rabbanan le the Rabbi Eliezer b'chutach habavli. We still, why are the Rabbanan arguing b'chutach habavli? Even if you want to say the Rabbanan do not hold of hetem mitzaref leisa, permitted combines with forbidden, still chutach habavli they can eat in 9 minutes. So the thing itself will be kedei achilas pras, and that's a diaraisa. So Zakti Gemara, don't put that. Because what's chutach? Chutach is a dip, not something that you normally eat by itself. Ella hanach lechutach habavli de lesbe kazayis b'chtei achilas pras, because it's not in this idea of eating a sheer kazayis within the time that it takes to eat a pras 9 minutes. Because the kasha v'achale, because if he goes ahead and he actually grabs the chutach and gulps it down and eat it, batla date eitza kol adam, his attitude is nullified against the attitude of other people. This is a dip. It's not edible. It's like a dip. One doesn't take mustard and go like this, squeeze the mustard, French mustard bottle, or take the ketchup and pour it down your throat. It's a dip. It's a dip. It's not meant to be eaten. It's meant to be dipped. The imishtar, and the Gemara says, but if imishtar kishata v'achal lesbei kizayis kedei achilas pras, and if he dips it in the normal way, like we do, you dip it into the mustard, you dip it into the ketchup, he's not going to eat kedei achilas pras. That's not called kedei achilas pras. Sorry, you're not getting it. So Esvei comes along Abai and he says from another place. I'll give you a different story. Shtei kedeiros, I got 2 pots. Okay? Achad shel chulin v'achad shel truma. One filled with chulin and one filled with truma. Ulefneyen, and in front of them, shnei meduchais, 2 mortars. In other words, where they pounded the spices. Echad shel chulin, one of spices, of good old regular spices. Ve'echad shel truma, and one filled up with spices of truma. V'naflu elu l'soich elu, and these mortars tipped over and they poured into one of the 2 pots, one of the pots of chulin and one of the pots of truma. Mutarin, we say it's not a problem. The chulin one could be eaten by anyone, and the truma one will be eaten by the kohen. Shani oimer truma l'soich truma. I say the spices of truma fell into the truma pot. Naflo, the shani truma l'soich truma naflo. The chulin l'soich from the chulin naflo, and the good old regular spices fell into the good old regular pot. The Abed the Gemara, how could you just simply be so flippant about that? I could say, don't worry, I'm not going to worry that the truma spices fell into the chulin pot. The Abed kizayis b'tei achilas pras diaraisa. But if I say if you eat a volume of an olive, within 9 minutes, within a day, the price happens to be a biblical prohibition. Amai Aminon Shani Oimen. Why do I simply so flippantly say, because I say, don't worry about it. The regular spices fell into the regular and the truma spices fell into the truma. Maybe not, because if it's a suffix, it's an uncertainty. And if it's a dioraisa, if it's biblical, the halacha is suffix dioraisa lechumra. An uncertainty that's biblical, we go lechumra. We're stringent. So what's going on over here? And for the Gemara, so says the Gemara, we are now 44a4, Amalei, Hanach Teruma, Tavlin de Rabbanon. Put that aside because, let me go find a place over here. Amalei says like this, Amalei, Hanach Letrumas Tavlin de Rabbanon. Because I'm going to let you know that the spices are only truma rabbinically. Because midiyai raisa, biblically, only grains, wine, and olive oil have a chiyuv, must be, well, you must do litra. You have to separate out the trumas maitras. Therefore, spices that you have to do truma is only rabbinical in nature. And if it's rabbinical in nature and I have a suffix, I have an uncertainty, suffix, the rabbanon is lekula. A rabbinical uncertainty, we're lenient. And since we have an uncertainty over here, we're going to go lenient. And we're going to say the spices of chulin fell into the chulin and the spices of truma fell into the truma. Ace face, so Abai says, I got another case. Shtei kufais, achas shel chulin, va'achas shel truma. If I've got two baskets over here, one of chulin and one of truma, lefneim beis soyin, achas shel chulin, va'achas shel truma. And I got two other things over here, one of chulin and one of truma. V'naflu elu l'soich elu. So now we're dealing with grains. We're dealing with grains, and grains are mechuyev midiyaraisa. Are biblically, you need to bring truma, and still we say mutarin. It's allowed. The chulin part is allowed to every Jew. Shan yoime, because I say chulin naflu truma, let's say truma naflu. Because I say chulin fell into the chulin stuff, fell into the chulin, and the truma stuff fell into the truma, so the chulin can be eaten by everybody. Frank the Noflo, Frank the Gemara, but if you say that the volume of a zayis, if it's eaten within the 9-minute period, is a diaraisa to create a forbidden, then give you malchus. Amai Amrin and Shani Oimer. Why do you just flippantly say? Because I say it's not a problem. Because whatever fell into this, fell into the chulin, fell into the chulin, truma fell into the truma. Who says it's an uncertainty and a biblical uncertainty? We're stringent. Suffolk deraisa is l'chumra. So the Gemara, and this is so the Gemara, Amalei, and the Rambam paskins this way. Hanach l'truma. Put aside the whole questions you have from truma. Bizman azeh today. The Rabbanon, all terumos, maisris are all rabbinical. There is nothing biblical. The Beis Hamikdash is no longer in standing, and we no longer, at least at that time, are no longer, we are in Golus, and we're no longer in Eretz Yisrael. Okay? So, no longer in Eretz Yisrael, therefore it's only rabbinical in nature. So you're going to ask me, so today we're back in Eretz Yisrael. There are, in fact, and this is the major point, in 1990, the year I was married, after 2,000 years of davening, for the first time ever in our lifetimes, not in our lifetimes, in the lifetimes of our lifetimes, we have experienced the miracle and we don't realize it. More Jews, as of 1990, live in Eretz Yisrael than the entire diaspora. Since the fall of the second Beis Hamikdash for 2,000 years, our forefathers and foremothers davened and prayed next year in Jerusalem to Kabe Shefa, the Gadol Echad Sundays Lekabetz Giliyasenu, the ingathering of the exiles. And in our lifetimes, we just don't even think about it. It's remarkable. In our lifetimes, it has happened. And we should recognize that we are living in the times of watching a nevuah, a prophecy come true. That God will gather us back in. And every day that we're actually living, breathing in a time of prophecy. And if it sounds silly, it's not. If you think about it, our history, if you had told my great-grandparents that this would happen, they would have laughed. Even my Zaydu was born in 1907, and my other grandpa born in 1911. When they were first born, they would never have thought in their lifetimes they would ever see such a thing. And they were Zoicha. My grandparents were nifter right around 1990, 1991. They were Zoicha at the end of their life to see this, which is a remarkable thing. That is why today there is shilas whether we are once again mechuyev in Trumas Hamayis. But as of the Gemara is saying, where most people were not in Eretz Yisrael, obviously, they were diaspora, we were no longer in control of Eretz Yisrael. The Rambam paskin that today it's only a D'Rabbanan, but in fact today, and so Jerry over there was putting his hands by his thing, can recognize that exactly this shaila is not a simple question. Whether today you are mechuyev to separate out Trumas Maasros, because the fact is we have more Jews on Eretz Yisrael than we ever think. Jerry, you probably could speak to this. Has that question come up?
We also was a suffix where we have our greenhouses, if it is Eretz Yisrael or not.
That's very well put, because a lot is chutz la'aretz, and there are many people in Eretz Yisrael who lived their entire life in Israel that have never gone to a lot. That have never gone to a lot because they consider it chutz la'aretz, and they don't want to go out of Eretz Yisrael. And that's right. Jerry is in the Negev, right? All the way south, right? You're in the south.
We're the most southern point of Gaza, a mile from the Gaza border and a mile from the Egyptian border.
So that's right. So that is a question whether that's the Sinai or whether that's the Sinai. It's so you got a lot of questions, Jerry. Jerry's got a lot of shiurim to give us, but this question is remarkable in our lifetime, because it is in our lifetime that things have completely changed. And we should be makir, we should appreciate that we are living in times of prophecy, for lack of a better word. Okay, I know it's 48. If you guys don't mind, we'll go till 9 o'clock unless anybody's in a rush. Jerry, are you okay? Jeff, are you guys okay? Yeah? Okay, great, because this Gemara was hard, I know. And I just want to get us at least on the base. So it says the Gemara, Hanach l'truma b'zman hazeh, the Rabbanan, it's all the Rabbanan because we don't have control of Eretz Yisrael. And the question is, what is control of Eretz Yisrael? So, but that again, we're going to put that aside. So straight to Gemara. Back to the case of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, Ein heter mitzdarf l'issa, permitted does not combine with prohibited, except by Nazir, because it says mishras infused. If anything infused with the grapes. Right? That's what he said. So he says, Hi Mishras, Lahechi Hu Da'asa. This that Rabbi Yochanan said that there is hetes mitzdarf le'isser by Nazir because it says Mishras. He says, is that what we use Mishras for? If you remember, if you just want to see it, it's on 43b3 in the right-hand corner. If you just want to go back to it, Amar Abavu, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol Yisum Shebetayra, Ein heter mitzdarf le'isser, chutz mi yisurei nazir sharei amatar mishras. Right? If you remember back there, he said we do not have what he called a permitted does not combine with a forbidden, except in the case of a nazir, where if he eats grapes with bread and together it's a shear of a kezayis, he will be able to get malchus because it says mishras infused. Right, the Gemara over here. Wait a minute. That's not what we're using mishras for. It's already used up. You got that. That word is not available to teach you that in that case we do say hetes mitzdarf le'isser. Permitted is combined with the forbidden. Why? Because we used it somewhere else. Mishras, the word mishras, and now we're on 44b1. We turn the page, maybe b1. Litain tam ke'ikr. Mishras teaches us tam ke'ikr. Look at the top Rashi. Lasois tamoy shel isa ki ikroi umashu, that if something gives over a tam, if something gives over a flavor, that becomes the most important thing, which like we learned before, if you have a little bit of truma spices, but it gives over flavor, right? It gives over flavor, even though it is so overwhelmed by chulin, over 100 to 1, since its flavor is there, flavor is the most important thing, and that becomes the prominent flavor substance. In other words, give you an example. She'im shora anovim b'mayim v'yesh behem chtam yitam yayin chayiv. That if somebody would go ahead and soak grapes into water, right? And in the water there would now be a taste of grapes, they would be chayiv. Mikan, and therefore from here, from here you can learn out to the rest of the Torah. Uma Nazir. The case of a Nazir, again, who says at least Stam Nazir is 30 days. Okay? Stam Nazir is 30 days. And I can't have wine and take a yikah for 30 days. Ma Nazir Shein Israel. Madacha Nazir, whose Isser is not forever, because after 30 days he goes back to being a regular guy. And the Isser, the prohibition is not a prohibition about having benefit. He's not allowed to eat grape products, but he's allowed to benefit from grape products. And he can have a heter to Isser, as Rashi says, because during the 30 days, he can go to a chacham and he can be made for just the same way you could be mati, you could do a Toras Nidorim. You're like, because essentially Nazir is like a promise. And even though it's not an Isser forever, it's not an Isser against benefit, you can even get out of it if you go to a chacham. And with all that, we still say, also by Tam Ke'ikr, its flavor becomes the most important thing. So even if you have water, but you would flavor it with wine, and you can taste the wine or the grapes, you can taste the grapes, right? It's enough to aser and give you malchus, right? And kalayim, the case of kalayim, if you remember klei acherem, where you plant things in a vineyard, you plant it too close together, different kind of grains, or shatnez, meaning wool and linen. If you put wool and linen together, you're not allowed to wear it. She'isurai Israelam, whose issue prohibition is forever. That the stuff that you planted in the vineyard you cannot eat, and the clothing you cannot wear. The isurai israno, and in fact you're not allowed to benefit from it. And you cannot get out of it by going to a chacham to be made for it, to try to get out of it. Definitely we're going to say that it's something that imparts flavor, becomes the most important thing. And that would be the din with Arla B'Shtayim, because Arla has two things. Arla has that it's Osabano, you're not allowed to benefit from it, right? And you cannot get out of it, and you can't get out of it, right? Even though its Isser is not forever, because by year 4, year 5, you can eat from it, but still, it has more things than it knows here. So you see that the fact of the word Mishras, the word Mishras is not available to Rabbi Yochanan to teach me that by Nazir, Heter Mitztaref Le'Isser, that Heter is Mitztaref Le'Isser. Guys, can you just wait 1 minute? I just got to get the door. Hold on. Guys, just hang on 1 minute. We're almost done. Just give me 1 second. Hi, sorry guys. Here we go. Typical Zimmerman household. Here we go. So, we're gonna stop over here just in a minute. So that the question becomes obvious. How does Rabbi Yochanan say that it's available by Nozir for Hetel Mitzaref Le'Isser, for Hetel Mitzaref Le'Isser, when in fact that's not the case. It's learning over here. Tam Ki'ikr, Zakti Gemara, Hamani, who's this Baraiso that's talking about that Mishras infused is coming to teach me Tam Ki'ikr, Rabbanani. It's the Rabbanon. The Rabbi Yochanan, the Amakir Rabbi Akiva, but Rabbi Yochanan is saying that, which his statement, that Mishras, that infused, is coming to teach us the combination principle, that Heter is Mitzaref Le'Isser, that permitted is combining with forbidden by a Nazir, which goes according to Rabbi Akiva, who disagrees with the Chachamim over here. Hi, Rabbi Akiva. What's this case of Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Akiva de Masnisen. If you want to say it's Rabbi Akiva of the Mishnah in Nazir, because it says over there, Rabbi Akiva Oimer, Nazir sheshara pita b'yayin, the Nazir that soaks his bread and wine. V'yesh boilet starif kedei kezayis, and there's enough to combine between the bread and the wine to create a shir kezayis at olives volume. So if he eats the two of them together, Yechayev, which would then seem to look like that's the mission where Rabbi Akiva say, syrup, they combine. The heter, the permitted bread, is combining with the forbidden wine to create a shir kezayis, a volume size of kezayis, and together he eats it together. He's chayev to go with it. So pray to Gemara, that's not a raya. That's no proof. Who said it's because of the combination of bread and wine? Maybe it's from the wine alone. The amount of wine that was soaked into the bread was more than a kezayis. But then you can say, if there's a kezayis of yayin by itself, what's the big? Of course, obviously, if he ate a kezayis of wine by itself, why wouldn't you think that it would be chayiv? I don't need you to teach me that. Zakti Gemara, Kamash Malon, and now we're on 44b2. The Abba got the ta'aroives, even though the wine has now been mixed in, meaning you can no longer see the wine. You can no longer see the wine, right? You can no longer see the wine. I might think if I can't see the wine, it's not a problem. Kamash Malon, it is a problem. So Zakti Gemara, Ela Rabbi Akiva did, we're on 44b2. Ela Rabbi Akiva did V'raisa, we're going to finish in exactly 1 or 2 minutes here. Ela Rabbi Akiva did V'raisa, Ela Rabbi Akiva of the V'raisa. The time, because we learned, Rabbi Akiva Oimel, Rabbi Akiva said, Nozir sheshara pita b'yayin, a Nozir who soaked his bread and wine, V'ochel kezayis mipas u'miyayin, and now he adds a couple extra words here. And a Nozir, and ate a Nozir who soaked his bread and wine and ate an olives volume of the bread and wine. Bread and wine. That clearly chayiv is chayiv. Over here, Rabbi Akiva is very clear. So over here, Rabbi Akiva is clearly saying that I use the word mishras to teach me that by a Nazir, I'm teaching you that heter permitted combined with the forbidden. Heter mitzaref le'isser, that if I have wine less than a kezayis and bread less than a kezayis and I eat it together, you've eaten a kezayis. Even though part of it is still permitted, the bread, you're still usher. Masha'en came the Rabbanon. The Rabbanon say, no, we learned from here, from Mishras, Tam Ki'ikr, that Tam, that flavor, if it imparts flavor, that becomes the most important thing. And this is not about syrup combinations. So now we're going to stop over here. The Gemara is going to take off tomorrow with, okay, so how does Rabbi Akiva know Tam Ki'ikr? How does Rabbi Akiva know the law? How does Rabbi Akiva know the law of that imparting flavor makes it the most important thing? And then we're going to take off from there, and that's where we're going. Guys, have a great day today.